Right. So essentially, it's a very broad topic, and I realize that you'll be coming from different industries and have different, challenges that you're all facing. And so, as I mentioned, it'd be great if you guys could let me know what kind of challenges you feel that you're facing at the moment and what you would like to get out of it. What I'll do is I'll go through the agenda is essentially me presenting a little bit about myself and what we do at Atom CTO, then talking about what the main levers for boosting turnover are and how tech can assist in those in those levers. Now, when I'm looking at those areas that tech can assist, again, as I mentioned, is very broad, and each industry can have very specific things that you can do in order to increase your turnover. So that's kind of really the point. If there's anything in there that you feel that is specific to you that you want to know about, I will talk in a very broad brush. I'll talk a very high level, in a very broad brush aspect, and I'll mention certain tools that I use and that we've been using with different clients, so you can get a feel of what's out there. But again, if there's something specific that you guys really want to know more about, then please let me know. So Teresa, you've raised your hand. Or no? Okay. No. Right.
Yes, sorry, that was quick. I'm looking for my notebook, but yes, thank you. So I'm involved in sustainability, and I do awareness. So I organize activities. I'm learning to present myself because I've made a bit of mess for Saffron before. So let me be clear. So what I'm interested in is my passion to become a job. So at the moment I have a job, thank God, but I want to start slowly to build up my business. I don't want to work for someone else because I've been doing this for 3 years now. Oh, I might turn off my camera. And can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. But regarding technology, yeah, sorry, yeah. You think I'm gonna lose a lot if I start my own business? You think I may be better to leave my job and start in a business that is already doing this, so that I learn before becoming maybe a consultant or something? Because in terms of technology, what I do is I use Zoom mainly, and I can see everybody use Zoom, and I use email, and everybody use email. So I don't think I will be behind in terms of technology if I have my own enterprise. And I don't know if I've been clear.
So I guess the way I always approach it whenever someone talks to me about building technology or even using technology for their own business, I say to them, look, can you run your business without building something new? And can you run your business without having to spend a huge amount on IT, in the sense that, well, and this will go into some of probably the next slide, actually. So this one here. So can you run your business in a way that requires least technology? Then as you grow and scale, you'll be able to see the main pain points that you have within your business that you can then use to optimize, or you'll be able to see areas where you're getting more growth and attention, and you'll be able to use technology to boost that and find new ways of accessing those markets. So, I mean, whether you should quit your job or not, I guess that's something I can't really advise you on. But what I can say is that you don't necessarily need huge amounts of technology to get up and running. I don't know exactly what it is that you're doing, but if it's a consultancy piece, then, I mean, we started Atom with basically, an Office 365 subscription, online meetings, because we're all remote, and a methodology, and that was it, right? So you don't need huge amounts to get started. Obviously, then you bring in your accounting systems and other things that you need to do to secure your revenue and your business. But it doesn't need to be huge. You don't have to have a huge outlay to get things up and running. I don't know if that answers it.
Adam, can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
Adam, this is Ian. What you missed the first slide. You're going to tell us what you do.
Yeah.
What do you think you'll do, please?
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of just outline here. So I can go through us, and then you can get a little bit of understanding of who we are. So what is a CTO? So as I had to explain to Abiola just recently, a CTO is Chief Technology Officer. So what we do is we work primarily with early stage startups, so the pre-seed, seed, Series A stage startups. So people who come to us with an idea and don't necessarily know how to make that idea live through technology. So most of the companies that we work with at the moment have non-technical founders who've got a great business vision. They've been in a certain industry for a number of years. They've seen a gap in the market and they want to exploit that by making something more efficient within that market. And so what we do is we work with you to create a methodology, a roadmap for how technology can be used, how you can build that out, what the costs will be. And we will then either help build that for you. So we've got teams ourselves that can build that, but we've also got a global network of partners and service providers, vendors, all of whom can help if you've got particular needs. So sometimes you may have something that's very niche. So for example, like augmented reality or virtual reality, that's quite a niche thing. We have people within our network that would be able to deal with that. So a lot of the people that come to us, like I say, just have an idea and just need to understand how they can go to market with that idea. So we specialize really in that whole MVP model. And as you grow and scale, we've had a number of customers who've worked with us for a year or two, have raised significant money. And then what we do is we help them build their own team. So we'll help them find a new CTO, so someone in charge of their technology, and we'll build a team for them so that they can go off. So once they've raised a few million, like a couple of our customers have done, they need their own teams because they want to scale much more. We also work with much larger companies as well, helping them on their operations, but generally we tend to work mostly with startups and work with them over the longer period. So just to move on to this. So obviously the topic being that how do you increase your revenue using tech? Now, all of that really depends on your business, right? So it really depends on what you're doing. So there are simple ways of increasing your revenue, right? Increase your prices. That's obviously going to increase your revenue. If you're looking at the traditional things that people say, earn more from your customers, gain more customers, just sell more, get more customers, that will increase your turnover. However, we also look at it from a more holistic perspective, right? So you'll have a product or a service that you'll want to sell out. Now, as you grow that and scale that, you will end up increasing the number of personnel within your business. So the question is, how do you scale that in an efficient way? So one of the key things that we look at, and why I've mentioned being more productive, is that depending on the size of your business, you will want to try and look at optimizing the business processes. So if you understand the areas of your business that add value, so that create revenue or create efficiencies, you can target those areas and then try to make them scalable. And a lot of what you can do there is just taking away activities that are not generating revenue, non-productive, right, for the business. The other thing is, as you grow and as you scale, you really need to understand how you're making money. Because one of the things is that oftentimes scale can hide problems. So as you grow, that growth, that revenue boost, that turnover boost can actually hide inefficiencies within your business, which are, say, profitability is a good example, right? You can make more and more money, but if you're being less profitable, then the question is, should you be generating that much more revenue? Why aren't you profitable? And the other thing is around automating processes, which kind of goes into the non-revenue generating activities, but actually is also about if there's something that is there that you're doing that is quite repetitive, then see if you can automate that or even outsource that to some extent. So I'll go into some very broad areas because, as I said, I'm not entirely sure what all you guys are doing. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge and a bit of a mix. But what I want to try and do through these slides is just kind of pique your interest and get your brain juices flowing to figure out, okay, is there anything in here that can help me? So to give you some examples on customer insights, one of the things that we've been doing a lot, I've been doing in companies over the years that I've been head of technology for, but also you see a lot more with startups is obviously data. Now, data doesn't mean that you have to go off and do lots of machine learning and lots of kind of big data type pieces. It's simple things about understanding how your customers behave with your website. So how interact with you and your company. So if we take an e-commerce example, right, you've got tools such as Google Analytics, Mouseflow, which helps you track how people are interacting with your site, Mixpanel, which is an alternative to Google Analytics, which has a little bit more analytics side to it. So it's got a little bit more around the reporting. You can use that to track, okay, how do people go through my if we take an e-commerce site, how do people go through my website? What are the stumbling blocks for them to go and add stuff into the basket, right? Are there any issues at checkout? Are there any issues of registration? How quickly do people go through the process from finding a product to purchasing a product? So that helps you optimize the things that you want, which are people to put things into a basket and actually then go off and often buy them. And then you can find out, are payments causing a problem? Do people stop on payments? Do they stop because you don't have enough payment options? Are they stopping because they're finding payment too difficult? So all of these things that, you can start looking at and analyzing as part of your business. And data can be anywhere within your organization, right? It's not just about the data that you capture from users that are interacting with your site. You've also got a gold mine sitting in your accounting system. So some of the interesting questions that discussions I have with people is that, okay, yeah, we can sell more to our existing customers. That's great. But do your existing customers pay you on time? Are they profitable? So if you don't, again, it's all being on top of your numbers and knowing your numbers. So one of the interesting things that, when we're talking to business owners is that you'll have a forecast on the kind of sales that you want. And you'll say, okay, if I increase my sales to this customer, who's maybe my biggest customer, I can increase my turnover. But if that customer is paying you late and you have cash flow issues, then selling more to that customer is just going to increase your cash flow issues, right? Because you still need to pay the suppliers in order to get the goods through. So take all the different data points that you've got and look at it from a holistic perspective and use technology to capture these data points. So as I mentioned in the last point, you've got things like embedded surveys, intent forms. All of these things exist within things like HubSpot, MailChimp. If you're using any of these to send out emails, you can leverage some of the other products that they have to gain more insights into the customers. So exit surveys, right? So someone completes a basket and you automatically give them a survey on screen, or you can actually give them something via email. Now, it sounds like, you may not get huge amounts of responses back, but that's not really the key. The key is to get a bit more understanding each time with how your customers are working. I've put and I realize I'm talking very quickly here, but I'm realizing time is running out. So please stop me if there's something if I move too quickly. I've put something at the bottom about the third-party cookie changes that are arriving. It's not to set a panic, but just be aware that obviously the last iOS update has meant that, apps now need to declare or gain consent in order for them to track you. Also, you've had Firefox and Safari over the last few years have already stopped third-party cookies. Google have said they're dropping them from Chrome. All that really means is that there's going to be new ways of tracking customers, but the audiences that you would create on things like Facebook would become a little bit fuzzier. So what it means is that you don't get necessarily the same level of accuracy of data that you do, but there are ways that people like Google are trying to change that. I don't have all the full information. I've only just really been looking at that recently a little bit, but there's plenty of information out there if you just Google third-party cookies. So moving on to automation. So there's a whole bunch here, right? And I think, talk to you, Teresa, what is interesting here is that I don't know if any of you know, but there's a whole bunch of Zoom integrations you can put in, right? So if you look at the Zoom App Store, Zoom has a bunch of integrations. A lot of these companies will have a bunch of integrations. So we've been using something called MarsView as transcripts, right? So I have a podcast, I do the transcript for the podcast, but also for meetings. So if you're a consultant and you're running meetings, have a transcription service. It's an easy way of making minute notes, so you can concentrate on the meeting, then you can come back, refine those notes and send them out, so that as a consultant, it's important to cover what you're agreeing to, right? There are a number of other things that, I use on a personal basis. So things like Calendly, Social. So Calendly is just a way to book meetings. It's very simple. HubSpot have a similar thing. There's a few out there, but I don't know if you've ever had like the back and forth of emails on what time are you free, what time are you free. This just cuts out that noise. Something like Social is what I use for my own personal Twitter feed. It's the least attractive tool that you can use, but actually it just does the job for free. When we're looking at something like if you're in e-commerce and you want to monitor competitors, when I first did this many years ago, it was very, very time intensive, and you would have to go and build something to go and scrape websites. All the website scraping tools exist nowadays. So if you want to gain data from other sites, you can do that. But there's a great thing called Visual Ping that actually helps you understand when websites change. So this is the kind of thing that I used it for, is that when you're trying to book a ticket and you know that tickets are going to be released at a certain point in time, you can actually monitor that website and just to say and get a ping as soon as it's out, so you can try and get your tickets in quite quickly. It's a nice little thing that's there. There is also a thing now called robotic process automation. This tends to be something that works well for large enterprises, but can also be used in smaller businesses. So what they talk about with things like robotic process automation are, as I mentioned, the last point, things like handling of invoices coming through the system, right? So you can easily have, if you spend your time receiving invoices and then typing it into a Xero or a QuickBooks, there are ways of actually doing this now to send an email, like they can automatically be processed through what they call optical character recognition, so OCR. So there's a number of tools that you can do, and I'll move on to the things like chatbots and the no-code, low-code piece in a second. But there are things that you can do where you're doing something that's very, very repetitive, that is the same every time. You can look at some sort of process automation around that. And again, if you've got your accounting system, you've got plenty of accounting packages out there. So like, again, QuickBooks Sage, Xero, there are add-ons that you can use there to send out payment reminders and chasing emails and that. Just, again, it helps you not only, it doesn't necessarily help you boost your turnover, but helps you secure your turnover, right? To make sure you're getting the money in. And then when you're looking at things like growth, one of the things that I think is very fascinating at the moment, and which I think everyone who's got a new business and is looking to get on with tech without having to spend a lot of money, start looking at low code, no code solutions. So there is something called bubble.io, which helps you build web applications without any need of any code. It's a drag and drop builder. You need to have a little bit of understanding of how data works and data connectors and things like that. But I've come across a number of startups who just not very techy, but have managed to build their initial MVPs and their initial products using this. Similarly, you've got companies like Wix and Squarespace that you'll know that obviously, and WordPress out there that you can build websites quite quickly. But with something like Squarespace, you can also have landing pages. And again, in HubSpot, you can have landing pages, and all of this stuff exists out there that you don't necessarily need a full-on website, but you can have something where you can just have a single page that captures information about people, tells people about what you do, and captures information about them if you want them to download things or if you want them to get in contact with you, etc. So that's all there. And funnily enough, I use HubSpot a lot for LinkedIn. So I've got a page, I get so many requests on LinkedIn, and I guess you must do as well, but I get so many requests, especially from companies that want to develop products, right? So I've set up some forms on HubSpot, and I say, well, instead of sending me all your fluff, just go to this website, upload your information, and then I can go and look at it at my leisure. So I'm not then having to engage with people. I could spend the time doing other things, and I can say, look, fill it in, and you'll know if they're interested in your business if they fill that in. So it's small things like that that really help. The other piece, which is a bit bigger, which is leveraging tech service providers. So for those, so like Abiola, there are companies out there that do that sell sustainable products as part of the marketplace, right? So you obviously have Amazon and you have the Etsy's of the world, and not on the high streets, but there are a lot of people coming up now and creating their own networks. So it's well worth just spending a little bit of time to figure out, okay, is there a network that exists already where someone has created a marketplace that I can already sell my products without me having to create the infrastructure? Because a lot of these are popping up. You've already seen it with Deliveroo and Uber Eats, that they're creating this infrastructure that you don't need to create yourself. They're popping up now in especially the e-commerce world. And when I say build communities on Patreon, what I'm talking about there is, I don't know if you've come across Patreon, but Patreon is a great way to build. If you're doing something where you're able to provide great content for someone and you want to be able to offer them value for that, of course you could do that through YouTube, but Patreon is a way of building a community, having people interact with you putting out content, whether that's videos or podcasts, and actually putting up a paywall. So you can have various levels of subscription there. So you could have, I actually follow a guy called David McWilliams who has a economics podcast. And part of that is that you can get the podcast without adverts, but he also at the higher end offers courses. So for £10 a month, you can take courses, economics courses that are accredited. Right. So those things that exist already that you can set up without having to buy any technology. You can just buy a license and set that up. So I have another slide on some other examples, but I guess we've got 5 minutes left. So if there's anyone got any other questions, otherwise I can talk about some of the things that I've done previously, but I would suggest.
Right. Can I ask about the Patreon? Because I've been hearing about it and it seems really interesting, but I don't know, how you kind of get involved with that. But based on what you just said, it really resonates with me in terms of the podcasting, the courses, you know, and things like that. So maybe could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I've actually been playing around with it a little bit for Atom. So we've got the Atom Ventures podcast, and actually another one called the Real World Entrepreneurship podcast, which I'll plug while I can. So what I was looking to do with that was set up a page on Atom Ventures where we have the podcast, but also can do webinars like this, right? Where we can bring in people within our network to offer specific tailored courses for startups. And it's really simple. What you end up doing is you just basically create a page and can create various subscription tiers.
It's simple because you know how to do it, but somebody like me or others, it might not be that simple. Just saying.
Sure, but it is quite an intuitive piece. So what I would do is I would actually have a look around some of the others that are there and see how they're doing it, because a lot of these times, a lot of the people on there, it's very cheap to subscribe, right? So and you can see how other people are using it. So a lot of the people are using it to ask any questions, and then you can answer and respond to those questions there, and it becomes quite open as part of the community. You can have videos on there, you can have like a podcast on there, and you can paywall those so that people can only access certain things through that. But Patreon's just one. There are others on WordPress that can do similar things. I don't know the names off the top of my head.
So Patreon, is that like a brand name then? Because I hear people talking about it on YouTube a lot, like, oh, my Patreon or something like that.
It is.
Oh, it's a brand name.
It's
so is it like it's an e-commerce site that you can sort of white label to your business? Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
More like gay style, like gay.
Oh, yes, it's already been created for you, so you can just pay a subscription and put all your own products on there.
Right. Okay.
I presume that I'm asking really if that's what it is, but it sounds like they've already put the infrastructure. That's what Bhairav was saying before.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just say there's so many options, and every time new things coming up. To be honest, I just copy. I mean, I just do what my clients do, or I just do what the business that I look up to they're doing. Because if I start downloading programs, if I start paying for licenses, you know, it's never ending. So sorry, I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't know, but at the moment I'm just doing what the people I want to look like do. You know.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there is. You do get. I mean, it's a bit like Netflix subscriptions, right? You do end up having lots of different subscriptions doing the same thing, and maybe you maybe not be using them. So you should have a review of all the things that you're paying for on a regular basis. But yeah, ultimately, I guess, Theresa, if you're doing consulting, you want the least friction possible, right? So if your customers are doing something, you want to be there where your customers are.
I think Patreon is very much like Discord and Clubhouse in that you're paying additionally for exclusivity. So like where you have, like if you go on a website and you have what's called gated content, so you leave your name, your email address in order for you to be able to get this booklet or this report. It's similar in that sense. So you pay for Patreon to have the exclusive conversations. So you're already kind of like preaching to the converted a little bit. So you've got your followers, but for extra exclusivity, you can have those conversations elsewhere where you can really make a difference in terms of informing and guiding the conversation. So YouTube started to do some things similar because a lot of people on YouTube were on Patreon, whereby they now have, if you go in YouTube and anyone that you're following, if they're on a live, you'll see like a little dollar sign. So you can super chat that person, but YouTube take about 56% of what is donated to the content creator. But they also have membership. And that's because a lot of people were moving from YouTube and also having their Patreon, where it was like, right, I've got my YouTube channel, but I'm making extra money from Patreon. And that's where people can go. So you can, and you don't have as many restrictions because you're having a private conversation essentially. Whereas YouTube have a lot of restrictions where if you do certain things, they can remove you, they can demonetize you. And that's why a lot of people have like the Patreon, if that makes a bit more sense.
Thank you, Marcia.
You're welcome.
Makes sense now because I didn't really understand it, or I just hear about it, or like, what's that? What are they on about?
Yeah, a lot of YouTubers have both.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I think Patreon also takes less money, which is why
They do, yeah.
people use Patreon and people use like Cash App. So if you watch like any of your favorite people's lives, they did sort of like send you a little something, Aviola. If you watch certain lives, they'll say, Cash App me this, because they take less of a percentage than Google.
Right. Wow. There's just a bit like what Teresa said, there's just so much, you know, like out there and new developments constantly every day. Sometimes it's like, it's hard. Like, where do you start? How many do you try? I know you've got to start somewhere, but you know what I mean? But it's like,
I hear what you're saying. It can be quite difficult, but I think, you know, it's like buying a new car. You wouldn't try every new car before making a decision. And sometimes you just have to dive in with what you like and make sure you like the interface of these services and that they work for you. And you've heard people recommend them. And like you say, you know, people that you're inspired by or people that you want to be like are using them. That's a great recommendation.
Just go with that. Yeah.
I mean,
Thank
you could
you.
start off with something like YouTube, because essentially it is free. And then once you realize that you've got more of a following, then you can expand
Then
on
you
others.
expand.
But if
Right.
if you go to like YouTube, anyone that you're following who has a channel, and you click on the tab, they have a community tab. But it's to my best knowledge that once you hit a certain subscription level, that's when the community tab opens up, and that's when you can start posting like more text about like, oh, you can actually like link a little bit more to maybe your Instagram account, or oh, I'm doing this on Patreon, or oh, so you have to kind of like play the game, but that might be the lowest investment way for you to play around with it.
I think the key is always to make sure that you write down what you want, write your requirements first, and then go out and look at what fits your requirements. Because you can go and if you go out and try everything first, you can get quite confused quite quickly. But the key, really, what we always try and say is that write down what your needs are and what you feel your future needs might be, and then go out. And then a lot of these things do have free trials. Yeah, and then you've got a lot that have free trials that you can just try out and see do they give you what you need. But don't try out everything. Just try out a couple, because you'll find that the reason that there's so many, they all do something slightly different.
Yeah. The reason I was asking is because I want to do my own online courses. So I was just wondering where that would link in. But when you were saying, like, you know, you have these private conversations, or, you know, it can be training, it can be anything. So I'm thinking, well, how does that sort of like link with doing separate online courses, or is it, does one lead to the other? I don't know.
There's a whole world there around learning management systems as well, right? So you've got open source ones like Moodle. So it goes down to understanding what it is that you're trying to do, and are you trying to set courses in a certain way? Are there going to be certificates at the end of it? Are there going to be, you know, additional things that people can download and take away? So I would just map that out, and then
that's what I'm working on now. So that's why I was just asking the question, so that I can, you know, write it down, and it's part of my.
I think Learn Dash is another one on WordPress. That's another one there.
Abiola, what sort of courses are you trying to run?
So I'm doing different fashion courses, like pattern cutting, garment construction, vision boards, production management. It's all to do with the fashion industry.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I've realized in my research, there's, you know, as you said, I'm not inventing the wheel. There's so many people doing this online. I have been doing, over COVID, I have been doing my own workshops on upcycling. And it's just something that I want to put together under one umbrella. But again, it's like, how do I do it slightly different to everybody else? What can I offer? Because, you know, it's a big field within fashion itself. So that's what I'm sort of like working on at the moment, that what else can I offer, or even if I'm offering the same as others, how do I change it slightly? So, you know, that's why I was asking about the Patreon. But yeah, so it's all different fashion courses. So I'm trying to create my own fashion school.
I think from a marketing, just hearing this, am I okay to kind of like give a thought process?
Say that again, Marcia?
Am I okay to kind of like just like jump in? I think from a marketing aspect, you can kind of like dissect what you have, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So we're very much big on, you know, you hear that saying, content is king, content is king.
Mm.
But you can have like one blog, and from the topic that you have in one blog. So for anyone who's got like is looking to do a blog or has like that landing page or sends that tweet, you look at your topic, and then from your topic that you've taken to create this blog, then you can dissect that and you can recreate smaller posts. So you can create something for LinkedIn and make that very much then targeted for business. So let's say you're talking about sustainability. That blog that you have on sustainability, you could use some of the copy in that to have a talking piece about recyclable centers for clothing, and that could live on LinkedIn, because now you're talking to businesses. So you might want to, like, if you're targeting businesses, if you're then on Twitter, you could just talk about, I don't know, something like the Met Gala, let's say, and which star from the Met Gala or the Oscars had wore something that was considered upcycling. Or, oh, this is a really nice bag that this person had. So what we're now going to do is recreate this handbag, and we're going to have like a little, I don't know, like webinar. So you can then create a webinar and have a bit of marketing for that. So using all these different platforms, and you could say, okay, well, with this webinar, the webinar is going to be, we're going to make this handbag. And then what you could do with that is then have a gated content, which is, I'm going to sell you the pattern for the bag. So if you pay so much for the gated content, because you now want to have people that you might want to invite to your bigger project, so you kind of offset what it is that is the most valuable long term monetary. Do I want to make money from selling this pattern for this handbag, and therefore I'm going to use a different platform, which is a bit of different technology, which is more e-commerce? Or do I want to have gated technology, because the long-term goal is to create this email contact list of people that I can, because now I'm preaching to the converted, because I can see that they've already come here. They want to learn something, they want to make something. So now I'm going to use this bit of gated content, like what was earlier said before in the example of, you now have a form where you collect people's information, and then at a later date you can email to them about the courses after they've enrolled on a webinar.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I've been thinking about some of what you've said, but hearing it from somebody else, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is actually really informative. Really.
And that's on one piece, like we said, the Met Gala.
Yeah,
so it's like, what can you take from that?
Yeah, because it's so wide. But I was really thinking about doing just like the one topic at a certain period of time, and really tapping into the different areas, you know, of that. Like for example, like the same sustainability, there's so many areas that one can look into. And
the good thing with something like that is you have content, sorry to kind of make this marketing but you have something that you can either have content that's flash in the pan that you kind of have to respond to now, and then you have content that you can plan. And because you have content and you can plan, that's where you can look at the potential different bits of tech that you're going to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially
but
also something that stays. I don't want to just do it and then it disappears.
If you've got something that has longevity content, because then people will always go back to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Marcia, can you put your contact details in the chat box, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the event that we need to either record, you need to do anything. But thanks for joining.